with strength through self-care, bringing you more tips and tools rooted in holistic self-care so we can better support ourselves during COVID-19. Today is part one of a two-part video focused on grounding techniques. If you listened to my first video, you'll know that I talked a lot about being on autopilot during the day, where we're going about our day disconnected from our breath and our body and maybe even the interactions that we're having with others. To some extent, this is a pretty normal phenomenon that we've all experienced at one point or another, whether because we were daydreaming, we got distracted and our minds started to wander, or we were having a dissociative experience. The problem is this can sometimes cause a lot of distress. If we look at the concept of mindfulness, we learn that it's important to be in the present moment. That doesn't mean we can never think about the past or future. After all, we can learn from the past when we reflect on it. And as adults with responsibilities, we do have to look at the future sometimes when we're making plans, budgeting, scheduling appointments, etc. But the difficulty is that often when we wander into the past or future, our mind stays there and gets stuck, and we start to ruminate or fixate. And that leads to distress like anxiety, anger, and depressed mood. Grounding skills like meditation and mindfulness can help us to be more present. It can also help us to combat distress by refocusing or diverting our attention off of internal thoughts and feelings, often negative, that are making us feel uncomfortable and overwhelmed, and on to short tasks and exercises that are neutral or even positive in nature. The idea is healthy distraction, not denial. We still want to be aware of our distress and even acknowledge the sources of our distress. But we recognize that when our distress level is up here, it's hard for us to cope and definitely hard for us to problem solve effectively. So by taking our attention off of that distress and onto something else, it allows the distress to come down to a more manageable level. That's what grounding skills are going to help us with. They can also be particularly useful if you're someone who's experienced trauma and are often triggered, having really intense affect and emotion come on very suddenly. There are three broad categories when we talk about grounding techniques: mental, physical, and self-soothing. The last one, self-soothing, I'll be talking about more in my second video on grounding. Today, we'll focus our energy and attention on mental grounding and physical grounding, both of which involve neutral tasks and exercises to help us divert and help us with healthy distraction, as I mentioned earlier. So we're going to start out with some mental grounding techniques. I'm going to try to share a couple techniques for each category so you have different things to choose from, and so you can also combine multiple techniques if you so choose. Mental grounding techniques tend to involve more cognitive types of tasks, while physical grounding involves body movement and sensory input like touch and tactile. So our first mental grounding activity is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This involves looking around our immediate space and making observations using all of our senses. So we're going to start out with 5 things that we can see. Then we're going to move on to 4 things that we can hear. Then 3 things that we can touch or feel. 2 things that we can smell. And then the last one tends to be a little tricky for folks. If you do have access to a food item, a peppermint, a beverage, you can do 1 item that you taste, 1 flavor that you taste. If this is not accessible or not desirable for any reason, what you can do is name 1 thing that you like about yourself. If that's still hard, because it is for a lot of folks, you can think of 1 thing that other people have complimented you on before. The second mental grounding technique also involves paying attention to our immediate environment, but just using our sight rather than all of our senses. So for this activity, you're going to look around your immediate space, and this can be anywhere, indoors, in a room, outdoors, in your front yard, anywhere. But I want you to look around and identify all the items and objects that you see in your line of sight. Now, you don't want to name just 2 or 3, because the idea of grounding is we're trying to distract ourselves from our distress. So oftentimes, especially if we're really overwhelmed, we're going to need to do grounding for a few minutes to really feel the benefits. So I want you to really name all the things that you can see. And once you've done that, you're gonna look around again and you're gonna identify all the colors that you notice in your room. Now try to get creative with this. We could do good old-fashioned Roy G. Biv, but we'll probably end pretty quickly. Won't take too long. So I suggest looking for different shades and different hues of colors. So looking for turquoise or navy blue or violet, rather than just looking at blue, green, red, and orange. So you're gonna look around and name all the colors in your space, and you can do this right after you've named all the items and objects. So that's our second technique. It can be done independently or along with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. And the third and final mental grounding technique I want to share is something that's going to feel a little more math related for those of you who are students or those of you who maybe don't like math so much. And that's counting backwards from 100 by threes. Yes, I said that and I'm not joking. It's kind of like when we do the alphabet backwards from Z to A. It takes extra effort and attention than doing it from A to Z. Same thing with counting, especially when we're using an odd number and a little bit of a peculiar number like 3 versus an odd number that we're a little bit more used to, like counting by 5s, or an even number like 2s. So you're gonna find that this is a little bit challenging, and if it is, that's the point. This is gonna take a little bit of energy and it's gonna help to divert our mental attention and our mental energy. So those are 3 mental and cognitive techniques that you can use. Now I'd like to share some physical ones. And again, these involve our body and a lot of tactile sensation, touch. So the first one that I want to share with you is called Everyday Object. And I'm going to go ahead and grab an everyday object myself. This can be a pen, it can be our phones, chapstick, keys, really anything. But I want to be an object that you feel you encounter often. Could be a fidget if you have a fidget type of item that you use frequently as well. But I want you to take it and hold it in your hands and observe it like you're looking at it for the first time. And not only are you gonna look at it, but you're gonna move it around. You might feel it, might listen to it, might smell it, probably don't taste it for most of these. But we're really taking in as much information and input as we can and noticing little things that maybe we haven't noticed before. So that's our first physical grounding technique. And you can do this with more than one object as well, especially if you finish the first object pretty quickly. The second physical grounding technique that I'd like to share is one that involves more movement with our body and specifically our hands. This can be good if you have a lot of energy built up or a lot of tension built up, like you're dealing with anger and frustration. What you're gonna do is take your hands, put your palms together, kind of like a prayer-like position, and then you're gonna start rubbing them. So you're creating friction, and you're gonna do this more and more quickly for probably at least 20 seconds, maybe 30. You'll probably notice some changes in how your hands feel while you do this. And when you're done with your 30 seconds, you're gonna stop and you're just gonna hold the palms together. If you're comfortable and it feels safe to do so, you can close your eyes. And you're just gonna notice any sensations that you feel in your hands. You might notice temperature changes, tingling, or other sensations. So again, this is a way for us to get more in touch with the physical body and movement, while also releasing some of that tension that we have built up because of the emotional distress we're experiencing. So those are a couple of physical grounding techniques. These can be done on their own or even in conjunction with the mental ones. Again, the higher the distress, probably the longer we want to do grounding and the longer we need to do it to get that emotional distress down to a more manageable level or rating for us. Sometimes we use a 0 to 10 scale to kind of think about where we're at, how intense the feelings are. So if we're at a 10, we might have to do more grounding than if we're at a 6 or 7, and that's okay. Do what works for you. So I hope these techniques are helpful. Try them at home. You can try different adaptations. And stay tuned for part 2 of this video where I talk about positive self-soothing grounding, which can be particularly helpful for sadness, loneliness, and depressed mood. As always, I'm wishing you all wellness. Stay healthy, stay safe, and God willing, I'll see you next time.